Man Up, a program dedicated to inspiring and helping men live lives of heroic virtue. And now, it's time to Man Up.
Welcome to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. We are broadcasting on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. I am Joe Stopulus, and today we are going to start a little mini-series on a book by St. Francis de Sales called The Introduction to the Devout Life. One of, honestly, the great works of spiritual direction in the Catholic world, but even goes well beyond the Catholic world. Its influence is known throughout many Protestant circles as well, and has been now for about 500 years. Just an incredible book. I've quoted from it many times. I'm just now finally reading the whole thing in its entirety. I've grabbed bits and pieces from it for years, and I finally just read it, and I'll get into that in a bit of the experience in walking the journey with St. Francis de Sales, but it is one of the great books in all of Christian wisdom that I've ever encountered, and there's a reason it stood the test of time. So let's start in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So the introduction to the devout life. St. Francis de Sales. St. Francis de Sales, it's important to understand where he is from a timeline perspective. So he's born in 1567, so the mid-15s. So the Reformation's taking place 1519 area, 1520, somewhere in there. And so his life is obviously very much influenced by this big schism that's going on within the church. And so 40 years prior to him being born. And so obviously he's living with this throughout his life. And many people would say that he became a bishop. So he became a bishop. He died in 1622, and was known for his deep faith, his gentle approach to the religious divisions that had resulted from the Protestant Reformation. So people, even during his lifetime, understood that he was a tremendous teacher of the faith, and did so in a loving way that built bridges rather than tear them down even further, which I'm assuming during that time was a very difficult time for that. But he's also known very well for his writings, for his spiritual writings. And I'm only going to touch on this one book, but he's written many other great treatises, many other great works to help people with spiritual direction. But the big thing for St. Francis de Sales was that, and specifically in the introduction to the Devout Life, is it is not targeted to the monastic life. So many of the great, and I joked about this a lot on the show, which is to say, if I'm reading a book by a monk for monks, or about praying, or about whatever, it's really hard for me to make the jump from being able to be in quiet reflection all hours of the day to I'm surrounded by 6 kids and it's chaos and there's noise and I've got a job, and it's hard for me to bridge those gaps. And so something like this that is tailored more towards people who are living in the world, who have jobs, who are married, there's a lot of spiritual truths there that I can, as a guy living in 2024, that I can latch onto, that I can get from. And this book, so I'll dive a little bit into my experience with it, and then we'll kind of head to a break and dive into the actual book. But it is kind of like the book of Romans. If you have a highlighter and you are doing the book of James or the book of Romans, you've almost highlighted every single thing. It's almost impossible not to, because there's so much good stuff here. I have in front of me, I believe it's 17 pages of an outline that I put together that is single-spaced. So I took a book that is 200-some pages down to, it's still a lot of stuff, and now I am going to bring it down even further into some quotes that I want to share from this that I thought were pertinent to share with you all. But my point is, I got roughly 17 pages of notes out of this. That's a lot of notes. And what spoke to me is not going to speak to you. It might, but there's probably things you'd glean from it that I didn't. All that to say, highly recommend reading this book. We're going to dive into it over the next at least couple episodes because there's so much spiritual wisdom here. But I wanted to start off with that as a precursor, say, I'd heard a lot about this. I finally read it, and I'm glad I did. And it's definitely going to be one that I'll go back to again and again. So we're going to head to a short break, and we will be right back.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from John Leonetti, EOS Implementer, the entrepreneurial operating system, helping businesses and organizations clarify, simplify, and achieve their vision. John.Leonetti at eosworldwide.com. Fast Signs is a custom sign and visual solutions company with an extensive selection of digital signage, interior and exterior signs, banners, and vehicle wraps. Learn more at fastsigns.com. Thank you, Fast Signs in Clive, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for programming is provided by Construction Professionals, serving customers through a proven process, creating unique design, functionality, and artistic beauty. Construction Professionals is a Catholic family business built on a strong foundation. cpcustomhomes.com.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Edible Arrangements, for their support, offering fruit bouquets and gourmet dip chocolate treats. On the go or have it delivered for that special occasion, ediblearrangements.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Bozen the Florist. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, weddings, whatever the message, say more with Bozen. Bozen.com. 515-244-ROSE. Bozen makes the moment mean more.
Hi, I'm Claire Colwell, and I'm honored to join you on May 30th for the annual gala benefiting Inner Visions Healthcare. As an abortion survivor, I hope my adoption story provides you hope and encouragement. As a medical nonprofit, all proceeds support the life-affirming work Inner Visions provides abortion-minded women in need. Women who find themselves in similar situations my birth mom did over 36 years ago. For more information, visit ivhcare.org, and I'll see you on Thursday, May 30th.
Forge presents Catholic speaker and author Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers Wednesday, June 26 in downtown Des Moines. The deacon will draw parallels between St. Joseph and the father's role in a family. Register at iowacatholicradio.com and tune in to Beacon of Truth weekdays on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from Fitness by Design, your neighborhood fitness studio, located in Des Moines, offering PH or fitness classes, private and semi-private training, Beamer, and massage. Learn more at fitnessbydesigndm.com, 515-770-3844.
My help comes from you. You're right here.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. Starting today, a little mini-series on the Introduction to the Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales. And again, this book, my wife, Kristen, had read this years ago and talked about how great it is, and she's been surprised that I have not read it yet. She's kept surprised I've not read it yet, on and on. So finally I did it. So this book, I'm going to steal a little bit from Wikipedia here, was first edition in 1609, and final edition in 1619. As I mentioned, it has very popular in both Protestant and Catholic circles, as evidenced by the fact that it was translated into every single major language of the day. It is typically categorized as a form of reading of Lectio Divina. And it's also similar to the Imitation of Christ. It's considered a spiritual classic and one that is used oftentimes in spiritual direction. And the reason that is because of the fact that it is directed towards the lay people. So the background of the book, St. Francis de Sales gave spiritual direction to lots of people. And this specific book, The Introduction to the Devout Life, is a compilation of letters and notes that he used in spiritual direction for his cousin, a gal by the name of Madame Marie de Charmozy, who's a wife of some French ambassador. Point of that is this correspondence was going back and forth between him and his cousin, and she compiled the letters and showed them to her confessor, who then encouraged the Sales to publish them. So the entire book is a lot of letters to her. So it keeps, he says, my daughter, my spiritual daughter, it's all in the feminine person, because he is writing it to her. But at the same time, he understands that it is going to be, that it is not just for her, it's going to be for everyone. And so it's written kind of in a first person to her, but it clearly is for all Christians in any state of life. Again, I think it's really hard for us who are in the lay vocation to fully understand the fact that, like, when someone is talking about praying 4 hours a day or something like this in monastic life, it just doesn't quite translate. And so this book does a really good job of that. So the actual book itself is broken down into it's broken down into a lot of different parts. 5 major parts. So part 1 is attaining a firm resolution into the devout life. Part 2, prayer and sacraments. Part 3, the practice of virtue, patience, meekness, humility, obedience, chastity, and poverty. Part 4, some ordinary temptations and how to overcome them. Part 5, renewing and confirming the soul in devotion. So St. Francis sees the pursuit of holiness as something possible for all Christians, regardless of vocations. Again, regardless of where you're at in life, regardless of your age or your temperament, any of these things, he sees holiness as something that everyone can can achieve, can go for. And that's what this book is all about. And so, as I just mentioned there in those steps, kind of the first step is attaining a firm revolution, to truly believe that I want to do this, because living the devout life is not going to be easy. And so it kind of starts with what does it look like to want to want it? What does it look like to even want to want it? And then from there, what are the things I need to do to achieve this, to live this holy life? Again, I think we all want to be holy. In fact, I gave a talk recently to some confirmation students, and I asked the question, what is holiness? And I asked that question to a handful of people who I really trust in this issue, and I want to get some different opinions. And it kept coming back. Holiness is to be set apart. It is to be different. It is not to conform to the world. It is to conform to God. Holiness is something that is different. And obviously, if we're going to live this devout life, it is going to be different. It's going to be very different. And so that is something that St. Francis de Sales, again, very practically, I say very practically because he gets down to the minutia. He gets down into some very specific instances. So I will pause there and just say this book is one that everyone should have. It's similar to many other they're just great spiritual works. Again, Imitation of Christ, I already mentioned. There are books that everyone should have on their bookshelf, and you can go and just pull out a little nugget from, go read one page of it, go to Adoration and read one page of it. And there's so much depth to these books that you should have them, similar to obviously having the Bible, but to help you with spiritual direction, to help you with, if you need clarity in thought, there are some just tremendous books that have given us throughout the years. And this would be one of them. So make sure you have this on your bookshelf. So we'll dive into it. As I mentioned, the first step is to want it, right? To want it. And so I'm going to go, this is chapter 5 now. We're already 5 chapters in. And again, he breaks it down. Each chapter has a heading, and there's a subheading, and so it's actually very logical to understand. The first step must be purifying the soul. So I'm going to do a lot of quoting, so bear with me, but my hope is, as I've kind of thought through this, is if you can just glean onto one or two of these things, it could make a big difference. There's so many great quotes in here. Hopefully through my reading I don't want to take his words and try to make them my own. I just want his words to speak to you. And so in doing this, again, I'm going to quote a lot. I know it doesn't make for great radio, but here we go. The very first step towards spiritual health is to be purged of all of our sinful humors. Ordinary purification, whether of body or soul, is only accomplished by slow degrees, step by step, gradually and painfully. The soul which rises out from sin to the devout life has been compared to the dawn, which does not banish darkness suddenly, but by degrees. So the very first step is to be purged of all the sinful humors, all of the things that we kind of still take pleasure in. So we have to want to get rid of this. St. Catherine of Siena was very similar in how she said this. We have to turn away to even get onto the bridge, to get onto that bridge over the troubled water, and to make that first step, we have to turn away from those things that we're still holding on to. And this can only be, he says, done by slow degrees, step by step, gradually and painfully. Back to The Slight Edge, the book I mentioned probably 3 or 4 months ago at this point. We slowly, painfully, step by step. It's not going to happen overnight. If you have inclinations to sin, if you have things that have been, you talk about these paths. I talk a lot about it when it comes to addiction, whether it's to drugs, pornography, or anything else like that. You have created mental pathways for these things to happen. And so to get them I've seen them happen overnight through miracles. I mean, it does happen. But the normal way it happens is through arduous work, through turning to the good, by saying no over and over and over and over and over again. Just the way those pathways were formed originally, you have to say no. And so usually a lot of little no's. But you have to do it by slow degrees, step by step. So the second purification then is from all sinful affections. Be sure, my daughter, that if you seek to lead a devout life, you must not merely forsake sin, but you must further cleanse your heart from all affections pertaining to sin. How to effect this? Just so, when a penitent only hates sin through a weekly, although real contrition, he will resolve to avoid overt acts of sin But when his contrition is strong and hearty, he will not merely abhor sin, but every affection, every link, and every tendency to sin. Okay. You have to, this is again very similar to St. Catherine of Siena. Not only do we have to turn away from sin, right? Turn away from those things that are keeping us from the Lord, but we have to hate them. you have to go to the point where you abhor it. You abhor every link and tendency to sin. I think that's a big thing for us because St. Augustine says, "Lord, give me chastity, but not yet." Right? I think many of us have that same idea of, yeah, but I kind of like some of these things. I like some of these things that I'm holding on to. There's a reason that we sin. There's a reason that it's attractive, right? So, I mean, the evil one knows how to twist things to make them attractive. He takes things that are good and turns them bad. Again, I've mentioned in the past alcohol, right? So alcohol is used at the wedding of Cana, right? So the Lord saw wine as a good. It's used at the Last Supper, and obviously in extreme moderation in these cases, but still. And how many people's lives have been ruined by this thing, right? Obviously, lust is another thing. God has given us the gift of sexuality, and how many people's lives are ruined by that, by either pornography or by actually cheating on their spouses or whatever these things are. That these are goods, these are good things that God has created, and then they're being twisted. And so we have to take that desire that is in our hearts for the good and abhor the bad. So now once we've done that, he says we got to make, we have to take these resolutions. How do we do these resolutions? Well, we have to ask pardon first. I got to read, the way he writes is so good. Throw yourself at the Lord's feet as the prodigal son and as Mary Magdalene, as the woman convicted in adultery. Have mercy, Lord, on me, a sinner. O living fountain of mercy, have pity on me, as unworthy as I am. Resolve to do better. Lord, with the help of thy grace, I will never again give myself up to sin. I have loved it too well. Henceforth I will abhor it and cleave to thee. Father of mercies, I would live and die to thee. In order to put away past sin, accuse yourself bravely of it. Let there not be one sinful act which you do not bring to light. Resolve to make every effort to tear up the roots of sin from your heart, especially this and that individual sin which troubles you most. And lastly, in order to do this, resolve steadfastly to follow advice given to you and never think that you have done enough to atone for your past sin. He takes sin very seriously, as should we. One of the things I think that I long for more from the pulpit is this idea that we do sin and we need to stop. I think that he obviously is very good at calling out sin for what it is. And you hear about it here shortly when we talk about these reflections on hell. But what a beautiful act of contrition, asking pardon, resolve to do better, put away past sins, resolve to tear up the roots from your heart of any individual sin. And then lastly, understand that nothing we can do can make up for the sins of our past. And he obviously talked earlier there about the prodigal son, throwing ourselves at the feet. And I think that image a lot, that image speaks to me, because I every time I run a confession, that is the image I have, is of the prodigal son. And knowing that we did, I use the analogy with kids a lot with, if you break a window, right, you broke the window, you can ask for forgiveness. If your neighbor's window, you hit a baseball through, you can ask for forgiveness, but you have to make up for it. You can't, that happened. We then have to atone for the fact that we did something. And so it did happen. And so God will forgive us that, but we have to atone for that. And that is something that is always with us. So that hatred of sin, that understanding how bad sin is and how corrupt it is. And we have to have this, as I said in the first part, this absolute this hatred of sin, of never wanting to ever do it again. So then he goes on to these reflections, and he wants you to reflect on various things, or these meditations. And so this one is actually on the kind of the second coming of the end of the world. And he says, think of what an eternity of suffering implies. So I want you just to chew on that, to chew on it. I don't think any of us do this. I think any of us stop and just dwell on what does an eternity of suffering actually mean. So He goes in, now going into the next level, he says, beyond these sufferings, he's talking about the physical sufferings of being in hell. And he says, those eyes which delighted in impure, vicious sights, now behold devils. The ears which took pleasure in unholy words are now deafened by yell. So it goes really deep into like visualizing hell. Beyond all these sufferings, there's one greater still, the privation and pain of the loss of God's glory, which is forever denied to their vision. Consider how unsupportable the pains of hell will be by reason of their eternal duration. If the irritating bite of an insect or the restlessness of a fever makes an ordinary night seem so long and tedious, how terrible will the endless night of eternity be, where naught will be found save despair, blasphemy, and fury. He has these incredible. So first off, if you like bees, he has a lot of analogies to bees. So he does present spirituality in very simple daily images, and a lot of them are very related to nature and bees and things like that. There's some really cool things, and this is one of them. Like if the irritating bite of an insect or the restlessness of a fever makes an ordinary night seem so long and tedious, how much worse will hell be? Never ends, and we are deprived of God's glory. Ask your soul whether it can face the terrors of hell, and whether you can bear to lose God forever. Confess that you have repeatedly deserved to do so, and resolve henceforth to act differently, to recuse yourself from this abyss. Resolve on distinct and definite acts by which you may avoid sin, and thereby eternal death. So that's kind of this whole reflection on hell. And then from there, he goes to say, okay, we've done that. Now let's look at paradise. Consider the beauty and perfection of the countless inhabitants of the blessed country, millions and millions of angels, cherubim, and seraphim, the glorious company of the apostles, the martyrs, confessors, virgins, and saints. O blessed company, any single member of which surpasses all the glory of the world. What will it behold them all, to sing with them the sweet song of the Lamb? They rejoice with perpetual joy and share a bliss unspeakable with unchangeable lights. Consider how they enjoy the presence of God, who fills them with the richness of his vision, which is a perfect ocean of delight and the joy of being forever united to their head. So I'll pause it there. I think that's a good way to end it here. But so if you're going to adoration, if you want to spend a holy hour somewhere, whatever these things are, this book is spectacular for it. Right there, if you just did those 2 chapters and you did them over and over again, reflect on hell, and he walks you through. And I just gave you a little tiny blurb of it, and he walks you through to understand, hey, our actions have real consequences. And what does that look like? What is the end goal of these things? And then reflect on hell. Actually spend time. Spend 30 minutes, spend an hour thinking about what that would be like. Okay? And then juxtapose that with paradise, with the beatific vision, with the happiest moment of your life, but forever. Pure joy forever. And that's what he wants you to do. And again, I think it's very healthy, because these are things that I don't do on my regular basis. These are not things that I'm normally doing. And so he helps us to take a step back and reflect on all of these things. And then further on, we'll get to it in the next couple of weeks, he gives us ways to get better, ways to improve in the spiritual life. So we're going to head to a short break, and we'll be right back.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from independent realtor Chris Foster. Chris has served clients with everything real estate throughout Iowa since 2019. 641-891-8178 or online at the number 4 saleia.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from Laser Home Services. Catholic owned and operated, Laser Home Services has been providing Central Iowa with electric, plumbing, heating, and cooling services since 2001. Learn more at laserhomeservices.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by the law offices of Amanda T. Adams. Catholic owned and operated, Amanda can help with business formation, contracts, commercial transactions, and other business legal matters. Learn more at amandatadamsjdlaw.com.
From Perry to Patterson and everywhere at iowacatholicradio.com or the Iowa Catholic Radio app. Listener-supported Iowa Catholic Radio, connecting listeners to Christ.
My help comes from you. You're right here.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio as we continue on this discussion of the introduction to Devout Life. This first episode, I was really hoping to kind of set the stage for, what is this book about? First of all, what is the history on it? But secondly, we'll kind of dive into, piece by piece. And I want to just real quick recap what we went over. Then I want to dive a little bit deeper into the actual book, because I think that it's interesting, as I mentioned on the first part, that he breaks it down very, very specifically into little bite-sized pieces. So first off, as we just covered there in the first few chapters, essentially the first piece of this is to want it, right? So we have to with a firm resolve want to turn onto this path. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, and then he's going to say, okay, what are those things? We talked about the act of contrition, heartily wanting to do this, and then this idea of reflecting on what are the two paths in life. Where do they lead? To hell or to heaven, and then really spending time to dive into those. And I think that's a very obviously healthy place to start. When I look at the book itself, and I think this will be helpful for you to give you an idea of what we're talking about here. So I'm just going to list a whole bunch of the chapter headings, and then I'll kind of dive into it. What true devotion is, chapter 1. Chapter 2, the nature and excellence of devotion. Chapter 5, the first step must be purifying the soul. Second, from all purification from all sinful desires. Chapter 8, how to effect this purification. And then, boom, meditation. First meditation is on creation. Second meditation on the end of which we are created. Third meditation on the gifts of God. Fourth meditation on sin. Fifth meditation on death. Sixth meditation on judgment. Seventh meditation on hell. Eighth meditation on paradise. Ninth meditation on the choice open to you between heaven and hell. The 10th meditation, how the soul chooses a devout life. And then it goes into making a general confession and things on from there. All that to say, that was 36 pages. Those through there. Okay, so that's a bunch of chapters. They're all 2 to 4 pages each. Each of these meditations you could take to prayer for an entire hour, and he walks you through it. It's a guide. It's a guide to help you do this. So each of these meditations are not meant to be read one time. Oh, I did it. I'm done. No. This book is designed to help you. And those meditations it's kind of a theme. They'll pop back up later on in the book too, on some other things to meditate on. But this is like it's a spiritual retreat in a book form by one of the masters of it. And again, it is written for us. It is written for lay people. It is written for people who are not living in a monastery. And so hopefully by through this episode, you at least have an idea of, okay, what are we going to be talking about here? And again, my sincere hope is that you will go out, buy this book, and then have it, and then you will utilize it through your prayer time, whether it's a holy hour, whether it's an adoration, whether it's just 15 minutes at the start of the day. It is an incredible gift to the church, and I immediately upon reading it, I knew it was going to be one of those ones that I will have next to kind of in my bookshelf of prayer books that I'll go back to, because you can open up to any page and get something out of it. And the way that it's done, the way it's constructed, is I just mentioned. I mean, so there are, holy moly, 20, you were talking about probably 80, 90, 100 some odd chapters. I don't know. And so you can go through and say, man, if I'm struggling with this one thing, anxiety of the mind, page 202. Okay, boom, there's 2 pages from St. Francis de Sales on anxiety. On sadness, page 204, sadness and sorrow. It's an incredible book, so I hopefully have at this point wetted your whistle enough to stick with me for the next couple episodes, because I'm 36 pages in to a 200-page book. Again, I highlighted this thing to 17 pages worth of highlights, and I'm trying to get it down to about 3 pages of worth of things to talk to you guys about. So hopefully some of it can pique your interest, and you can grow in this introduction, into this wanting to be a part of the devout life that he writes so eloquently about. So thanks for joining me today on Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. I am Joe Stopulus. It's time to man up.
Man Up, inspiring men to live out their call to holiness.